Hi, I am Julia Kreutzer. I am a senior staff columnist with the opinions desk at the Pitt News, and I think that removing the gender titles of homecoming king and queen for this year's Stay at Homecoming is a huge step in the right direction because it makes a more safe and inclusive environment for not only just the gender nonconforming students at Pitt, but a more inclusive student body as a whole. I think the biggest thing that most Pitt students are missing right now is this feeling of community and connection, this feeling of having a safe place to quite literally come home to. And I think it is as much a symbolic gesture as it is a very tangible gesture of seeking to include these students. Pitt has been doing a lot over the past few years, expanding general neutral housing, expanding single occupancy restrooms, as well as switching their terminology of freshmen to first-year students, aiming to be more inclusive. And this is one of the biggest steps they've taken as it relates to amending longstanding traditions. The vice chancellor of alumni relations called this tradition antiquated and said that it really was taking away from what they were aiming to do as building community. This is something that is not necessarily surprising. Since the fall of 2018, the Pew Research Center has had a lot of data supporting the fact that young adults, particularly those aged 18 to 29, which accounts for the majority of students at Pitt, overwhelmingly support the transition towards more gender-neutral language. It's now 1 in 6 people actually personally know someone who uses pronouns other than she, her, or he, him, as well as 61% of respondents said they'd feel really comfortable using this language. And so it's not only something that falls in line with what Pitt has been doing over the past few years, but the data definitely would suggest that this would be a decision that's supported pretty overwhelmingly by the student body. I think that this hasn't necessarily impacted the homecoming court in terms of who is running and maybe who got the sponsorship to get on the homecoming court. But I do think that this may encourage a lot more students to participate in homecoming when they view it as a vehicle for change, as a means to improve the community and make Pitt a more accepting, welcoming, and accessible place. I think there most definitely is a relatively performative aspect to this change. Homecoming, like I said, is not something that a lot of students have engaged with in previous years, but I think that's also what makes this a really good arena to make these subtle changes. This is not something that will affect students who do not feel like they're gender nonconforming in any way. We haven't seen a lot of students engage with homecoming in years past, particularly once all of the sporting events are said and done with. There hasn't been a lot of engagement otherwise. So I think that this is something that really will not change much for students who don't feel like this is a positive or necessary change. I think this is something that is really for the community and will really only impact the community in any kind of dramatic or substantive way. I think that even though a lot of different homecoming traditions have become rather antiquated and somewhat out of touch, I think that this is a really nice gesture that will hopefully translate into more relevant points of student life at Pitt. As a member of the LGBT community as a whole, I think I've seen a lot of a huge push towards acceptance and the normalization of not assuming anyone's sexuality, gender, or any other facet of their identity. I've seen this particularly in Zoom lectures. A lot more people are beginning to share their pronouns at the beginning, but I think there's still a ways to go. If you want to write to me, you can reach me at jrk142@pitt.edu, and you can come back right here for more Pitt News content.